In this video, we're going to go ahead and make a cave generator. So when we click on play, you'll see here that our world is going to generate with some caves now. And we're also going to have a seed. So it's going to be a random seed by default. However, if we wanted to add something, for example, where the player could enter in a seed so they could play the same map, we could do that as well. So currently, we create this seed, and if I paste that seed in here again, it's going to create the exact same map. So you'll see here that now this is the same map as before. However, if I put this to 0 and play, it's going to be a random map every time. So this one is going to be a new map. You can see here. And then similar to that again, if I try one more time here, it's just going to create an entirely new map every time. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started on that process now. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to create our cave generator script. So we'll go over here, we'll create a new script, and I'm going to call this one cave generator. So the first thing that we're going to do in here is I'm just going to remove the start and update methods and also those using statements. And then we're going to add in a new using statement here. And we're going to be using the Unity engine .tilemaps. So to start off, we're going to need a few different serialized fields that we're going to use for our variables. So the first one that we're going to need is going to be a float, and we're going to call this one our cave frequency. And by default, I'm going to set mine to 0.07f. So this is going to control the frequency of the Perlin noise used to generate the caves. So a higher value is going to make the caves appear more frequent, but they're going to be smaller, while a lower value is going to result in larger and more spaced out caves. And we'll see how that works here in just a moment. And we're going to need another serialized field, which is also going to be a float. In this one, we're going to call the cave threshold. And by default, I'm going to set mine to 0.7f. And this is going to be a cutoff value that's going to determine whether a tile becomes part of the cave or not. So if the noise value for this particular tile is above this threshold, then that tile we're gonna remove that tile so it becomes a cave. We'll need another one, and this one is going to be an int, and this one we're going to call max cave depth offset. And by default, I'm going to set mine to 90. So this variable here is going to help us determine how deep our caves can actually generate from the world. So you'll see how this is calculated here in a moment when we set up our math calculations. And one more serialized field that we're going to need is going to be our cave start offset. And by default, I'm going to set mine equal to 10. And so both of these two are in tiles, by the way. 90 tiles and 10 tiles is what we're going to be using. And the cave start offset is going to control how close to the surface caves can start generating. And all of these numbers you can change to fit your needs. And then obviously if your world size is different and stuff, these probably won't work out well for you. You'll just have to adjust them accordingly. So we need a few more variables here, but we're not going to make these ones serialized fields as we're not going to need to change them in the editor here. So the first one I'm going to call random offset x. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to set a random offset y. And these are going to store random offsets that are going to be added to the Perlin noise. And that's going to help us ensure that the caves are different each time the world is generated. We're also going to need another int here. And this one we're going to call max cave depth. And this is going to store the calculated maximum depth at which caves can appear. And this is going to be based upon the max cave depth offset here. And you'll see that in just a moment. And the last thing that we're going to need is another int, and this one's going to be called seed. And so this one's going to store the seed that's going to be used for randomization, and this is going to help us ensure that the same seed generates the same world each time. And we're gonna have to go into our world generator here in a little bit, and we'll create that seed in there. But we're going to set this up here for now, just so we don't forget. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually create a public method here. And this one we're going to call set seed. And we're going to pass in an int of seed. Change that to void. And in here, all we're going to do is we're going to say this dot seed equals seed. So what we're going to do here in this method is we're going to allow we're making it public so we can reference it from our world generator script here in just a moment. And that's going to allow us to use this method here to set the seed for the cave generator script. And then that seed is going to be stored in this seed variable. And it's going to be, again, used to help ensure that consistent randomization. So like I said, we do need to go into the world generator script and add a couple of things as well. But I think that we'll go through the cave generator script entirely first, and then we'll jump over to the world generator script to hopefully make things make more sense. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to need an awake method. And I'm going to remove the private here just to keep things consistent. It's not something that is needed since they are private by default. And in here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to say random dot, and then we're going to say init state, and we're going to pass in seed. So what this is going to do is this is going to initialize Unity's random number generator with our seed. And so then that's going to help us, or that's going to ensure that all the random operations that we perform after this are consistent and we're able to reproduce them based on the specific seed that we use. And so what we'll need to do next then is we're going to actually create the two random offsets. So random offset x, and that one's going to be equal to a random.range. And for our range, I'm just going to use 0f to, I don't know, 10,000 f. And we're going to want to do the same thing here for random offset y. So this is going to generate our random range here, for example, and we're going to use this to add. We're going to add this to the Perlin noise calculations to make sure the caves are different each time. And how this is going to work is when we're instantiating this seed, or when we're initializing this seed. Let's say our seed is seed 1, 2, 3, for example. Every time this goes on seed 1, 2, 3, this random range is always going to be the same. So if on seed 1, 2, 3, the random range is 7 for the x and 8 for the y, if we get that same seed again, it's always going to be 7 and it's always going to be 8, for example. So that's why this seed is important for us here. And then after this, we're just going to need to create our generate caves method, and this is also going to be a public method. And I'm going to call it, like I said, generate caves. And this method is going to take in several parameters similar to our other ones on our terrain generator and biome generator, for example. So we're going to have a tile map, and that's going to just be called tile map. We're going to have an int of our width, similar an int of our height. And then we're going to have an int that is an array, and that's going to be our top row heights. And so we're going to pass all of these in when we call this method here in our world generator script. And now to actually generate the caves, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set our max cave depth, and that's going to be equal to our height. And then we're going to subtract our max cave depth offset. So since our max cave depth offset is set to 90 and the height of our world is 100, as we had it set before, right here, this is going to be 100 minus 90. So our max cave depth is going to be 10. So that means 10 from the bottom is the maximum place that caves will generate. So they won't generate lower than 10. So that's going to help us make sure there's no caves on the bottom of the world. So we can put something else there if we would like. And then next, we're going to need to create our for loops to cycle through all of the tiles, similar to the previous two videos here. So we're just going to do for int x equals 0. And then as long as x is less than the width, we want to x plus plus. So we want to increment through them. So this first one is going to iterate over each column in the world from 0 to the width, whatever the width is going to be. In our case, it's 300. And then we're also going to need to do the same thing for the y. So we're going to say for And then similar to before, we're just going to say int y. And then here we're going to say equals our top row heights. And then we'll put an x inside of there. And we're going to say as long as y is greater than or equal to our max cave depth. And then on this one, we want to do y minus minus as we're going to go down. So we're going to start at our top row heights. And then as long as we are greater than our max cave depth of 10 that we set right here, then we're going to continue going down the rows. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to skip any tiles that are above the cave start offset to ensure that caves don't appear too close to the surface. So to do that, we're going to do an if statement here, and we're going to say if y is greater than, and then in parentheses, we're going to say our top row heights, and we're going to set that to, or as long as it's greater than that, minus our cave start offset. And if that's the case, we're just going to continue, and we don't need to put the squiggly brackets there because we only have the one line for the if statement. So all this is doing is it's going to check the y location, and it's going to confirm if this is greater than the top row heights. So the top row that we had set up there in our previous video from the terrain generator script. And as long as it's greater than that minus the cave start offset, we're going to continue. So if it's bigger than this, minus 10, so 10 down from the surface, because that was the offset that we set here, then it's just going to skip all of them, so we're not placing any caves there. And then next, for any valid tiles, we're going to calculate the purlin noise value, and we're going to do that by doing a float, and we're going to simply call this one noise value. And that's going to equal to the function, the math dot purlin noise function. And in here, what we need to do is we want to do we want them to be offset a little bit. So we're going to do the x, and then we're going to do plus our random offset x that we created a little bit ago. And we're going to multiply that by our cave frequency. And we're going to do the same thing for y. So here we're going to say y plus our random offset y. Again, we're going to multiply that by our cave frequency. So again, we're using the mathf function here with the .purlin noise. And that's going to return, like it says here, it's going to return that value for our purlin noise. And what we're doing to offset this a little bit is we're adding our random offsets to the x and the y value. And then we're going to basically have them scaled, if you will, by the cave frequency here that we created above. And so once we have the purlin noise being calculated here, the next thing that we need to do is actually create the caves. So this is going to be another if statement. And inside here, we're going to say if our noise value is greater than our cave threshold that we set, then what we want to do is we want to create the cave, and to create the cave, all we're going to do is we're going to say our tile map dot set tile. And then we did this in the previous episodes as well. It's exactly the same thing, except for this one is going to be a new vector3 int. And inside here, again, at our current x, y, and for the z, it's going to be 0. And what we want to do with this is we want to make that tile null. So we're actually going to just remove the tile. So whenever this calculation pans out and our noise value is greater than our cave threshold that we set up here, what we're going to do is we're going to remove that tile, and that's going to be what creates our cave. All right, so now that we have everything in the cave generator script set up, we'll just hop over to our world generator, and we just need to add a couple of lines in here. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need a serialized field similar to our biome generator and terrain generator. And this one is just going to be called our cave generator, or it's going to be of type cave generator, and we're going to call it cave generator, similar to the other two. And then the next one, we're also going to want to do, you don't need to do this one a serialized field, but we're going to do a serialized field here so we can test it out with different seeds. And then this one here is going to be set to 0. So this is where we're going to create our seed for the entire world. And so next we're going to need to actually initialize the seed, and we're going to do that in an awake method. And again, I'm just going to remove that private keyword just to keep everything cleaner here. And so how we're going to do this is, well, maybe we're going to do something like if the seed is less than or equal to 0, then we're going to want to create our seed, and we're going to do it like this. So maybe we can add something where the player can enter in a seed. So if they have a particular map that they like or something like that, you know, they can enter in seed 1265 or something like that, and they'll be able to play that same map. And so here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to say seed, and that's going to equal a random.range. And then our range is going to be 1, comma, and then we're going to say int.maxValue. So the highest, so we're going to go from a 1 to the highest value that we can. Looks like I think we're getting this because we have that using statement up there, and we don't need it. So again, this method is instantly going to create our seed for us. And then the next thing that we'll need to do after we create our seed is we're going to need to actually apply our seed. And I'm just going to type this out now, but we don't have this created yet, but we're going to say apply seed, and we're going to pass in our seed, and this is going to be a method. And so what we'll do is maybe underneath where we do the generate world, we're going to go ahead and do void, and we're going to create that method, and it's going to be called apply seed. And we're going to pass in the parameters here, of int, and it's going to be called our seed. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to do random dot init state, and again, pass in the seed. And then for now, we only have this in our cave generator. So what we're going to do is we're going to do cave generator dot set seed. So we're going to call the set seed method that we created over here. And that's gonna set the seed for this script to the seed that we're creating here. And in future videos, we'll also randomize the terrain and the biome as well, so they're matching with the seeds. But right now, we're gonna focus on the cave portion. And then the last thing that we should have to do is right here, similar to the other ones, we're gonna want to generate our caves. And to do this, we're just going to go ahead and do our cave generator dot generate caves. And we're going to fill in. So here we're going to pass in, we're going to pass in our tile map. Make sure you do the lowercase tile map, our width, our height, and our top row heights. All right, so now that we have all of that set up and saved, if we hop over here to our editor, we'll click on our world generator. And we don't have our cave generator added here yet, but we'll go ahead and we'll add that to this object as well. And then here we'll have to do a couple of things in the world generator script. We're just going to need to drag in our world generator here so we can get that. And that should really be everything that we have to do for now. So if we go ahead and click play, we should see now our world generate. And it should have caves, which it does. And if we stop and we play again, we'll see that these caves should now be different, and they are. And the reason they're different is because our seed. So you'll see here that this is the seed that gets generated. I can't remember the whole number, but 8753, for example. And if we play again, it starts at 0, but since it's 0, it's going to become a random number. And it was 8753 again. Okay. I'm not entirely sure why the seed was being the same. I didn't make any changes. I just closed out of Unity and reopened it. And now the seeds are being random. So 6735. And then if we close and start again, we'll have a different one here. So 0140, and you'll see the caves look different as well. I don't know why that happened, but if it happens to you where the seed is continuously being the same, I would recommend closing out of Unity and starting it again. That's all I did to fix that if you run into that error. But as you can see here, the caves are generating, and we don't have any caves on the bottom 10 here. And we also don't have any on the top. So 10 below the top row heights that we had set here, which is perfect. And if you wanted to adjust the caves, the look and the feel, this is where we can use this cave frequency and the cave threshold. Now, you don't want to change these too much, as just the small change is going to have a pretty large impact. So you don't want to, you know, these are now much more caves. The same with the cave threshold. If we put this to too big of a number, we won't really have a whole lot of caves. So you can kind of adjust those, play with them, make them how you like. I thought that 0.7 and 0.07 and 0.7 were decent for our map. I think that this looks all right for now. And if we change the height and width of our map, we'll probably need to adjust these numbers as well. But for now, I think that this is okay. So there we have it. We have a fully functional cave generator that's in our world now. In the next video, I think that we're going to add in like little tunnels and stuff throughout the map to kind of make it so it's just not, you know, pure tiles. And then that'll give it a little bit more diversity here in our map. And then we'll maybe add in the randomization to our terrain generator and our biome generator as well. So the top of the terrain doesn't always look the same, and we'll have a little bit of fluctuation here in our biomes, so they're not going to be just a straight line like it is now. So if you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful at all, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.